Welcome to More Than a Conversation, the podcast where we meet and have discussions with some of the most interesting people and innovative leaders in their fields from all walks of life. We will be discussing everything from politics to theology to religion to philosophy to life. Every once in a while, I may just be on here talking about whatever's in the news and whatever I think will be of interest to you. This is your host, Patrick Conley, and I hope that today will be more than a conversation for you. Welcome to More Than a Conversation. This is your host, Patrick Conley, and today I am joined by Pastor Shane Stone. Pastor Stone is a church planter, and he's been navigating a lot of the difficulties of our current situation lately, and he's also a business owner. And so I was excited to have him on and talk to him about navigating the times that he's in as a business owner, as a pastor, what it's like to plant a church, and just to tell his story, because I think he has a story that will be interesting to all of you that are listening. Pastor Shane, it's so good to have you on today.
Patrick, thank you so much for the opportunity. I appreciate all that you do.
Shane, you and I have become acquainted over the last few years since I came to the Carolinas, and then lately been involved more and more in conversations together and so on and so forth. But when I met you, you were Pastor Shane. When I met you, you were business owner Shane. When I met you, you were a guy who was already well on his journey. But I like to say, like in the Marvel universe, the pastoring and business universe, we all have origin stories. So what is the origin story of Shane Stone? How did this journey begin?
Yeah, let's take the nickel tour. Growing up, I'm a fourth generation Church of God guy. My dad pastored in the state. Grandfather pastored, youth director. My great-grandfather was a church planter. He actually planted the Church of God in Walterboro. And years and years and years and decades ago. So it kind of runs in my blood. I went to Lee a couple of years, then got out of Lee early, went to be a youth pastor at a church in Virginia, left there, went to Charleston, South Carolina, and from there started pastoring at 21. But I took the scenic route to get to church planting because church planting is hard. Not everyone's cut out for it. I pastored 3 churches within about a year and a half. One of those we closed down, and I kind of had a running gag that if the overseer wanted a church closed, he could send me, because I'd either make it stay the same or we'd close it down, one or the other. So after that time, I kind of got a little burned out because, I was 22, 23. I thought I knew everything.
And you didn't. You're at 23. You didn't know it all.
No. And I thought, hey, I've got, my dad was in this thing. I watched him. I went to Lee for a year or two. Even though I didn't graduate, I still thought I knew everything. And started then working as a second guy again, as an administrator and associate pastor for a few years. In 2007, overseer approached me about planting a church or replanting a church in Inman. The Inman Church of God had a nice building, but it was not, they were running 8 people. Let's just be honest. They had 8 people. One was a retired pastor's wife, a widow, then some older precious people, but they had a pretty massive debt. And he asked me to go over there. I knew nothing about church planning at all. At that time, we got to think 2007, you didn't have all of these, avenues to learn. Podcasts weren't, they were a thing, but it wasn't nothing that we really didn't even know how to make a podcast. I think we had 56K internet. Maybe I had 128 on the lowest speed on cable modem at that time. I had a G3 Mac. So, I'm going way, way back. But we went over to Inman and we had a place on the Church of God campground. We sold it, took the money we had, kind of invested it into the church, and stayed there for 2.5 years replanting the church. I got burned out because I didn't have a network of guys that I could talk to kind of share with. There was no coaching for church planting. Again, There was no ARC at that time. It was very in its infant stage. The exponential network, that wasn't even around. So you couldn't just Google church planning and find something about an article to help you. So we stopped, and the business that I had been doing, which involved going to people's homes, checking on the status of their occupancy, if they're occupied, like I said, occupied, if it's vacant, if there's been any damage to the home. That type of business started hitting a spike in 2008 because of the financial crisis, because of Bank of America had bought out some bad debt from Countrywide, and Bank of America was a client. And my business just, it really quadrupled overnight. And I really had a choice. I could either keep going with the church, even though I was burned out, or start focusing totally on the business. And at that time I had 3 kids. I said, hey, I need to just kind of take a break. So I stepped out. I never turned in my credentials, never, backslid, never did any of that. But I just said, I'll just go somewhere and be a good church member. So our last Sunday, we actually had 77 people in our service. And we tried to get a few people to take it on as a project, but we really couldn't get anybody to take it on. We kind of helped dissipate those people to other churches. So at that time, I was done with ministry. I just was done. I started reporting as retired on my monthly reports. That was about a 3-month process. I originally did it as a joke, but I kind of started saying, hey, I'm retired. I'm not going to do this ever again. I'd make the comment at camp meeting, I want to be on the Retired Ministers Fellowship Board and be the youngest guy, and we can throw some pizza parties for the senior citizens. But I didn't think there was anything else left. And in 2016, my daughter decided on her own that when she graduated, she wanted to go to Lee. So at that moment, I said, well, I never graduated, and I'm not going to let my daughter beat me graduating. So I re-enrolled and started taking classes online, and started, getting back involved in some things, talking with some people. Started feeling the Lord speak to me about that he wasn't done with me and my ministry yet, and my family's ministry. I'm going to be honest. I thought it was indigestion. I thought it was gas. I didn't want to have anything to do with that. But I said, okay, God, I'll do what you want me to do. And I talked to the overseer, I talked to Brother Gillum at that time. And he really said, you've done this before. The thing to do, you're an entrepreneur. Church planning's the way to go. And the Church of God has this new program with ARC that they're working together to help guys to get training and coaching to not go through what you went through 10 years ago. I said, well, I really don't want to do that. Just send me to a good church. And so anyway, we candidated at a church, and that really didn't work out. And I knew it wasn't the right fit for me. I knew it wasn't, but it would be easier to go to an established church than starting a new church from scratch. That's easier. There's no other way about it. It's just easier to do that. So when we didn't get the vote, I, talked to my wife about it and said, hey, we're going to go into church planning. And after a couple of colorful metaphors that she used with me, and I can leave that up to the imagination of everyone, she reluctantly said, okay. And we began the journey of planning a church. But even along the journey of planning a church, I still candidated at another church because I wanted any other option than to start a church. Not because we don't need any new churches, because I believe we need more and more churches. It was just because it's hard. And we didn't get that. And so I knew then in February of 2019 that it was time to get going. And we went through the church planner training course that ARC provides. We read an intensive. ARC is the Association of Related Churches, and I commend the Church of God for jumping on board and partnering with a group that knows what they're doing when it comes to church planning. no offense, but our way of church planning pre-ARC was, if me and you have a disagreement, I'll take half your people and go down the street and start a church. That's where most of our churches have started from in the state. And again, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but that's not the way that the New Testament church did. They weren't quarreling amongst themselves and going and saying, well, hey, I'm upset because we're doing the color of the carpet green instead of red, so I'm going to take the red people over here and we're going to have the red carpet in our church. They were all about.
In all fairness, that's not just a COG problem or a Pentecostal problem. That's an American church planning problem. And it may be everywhere else too. I just know what I know.
Yep.
Church people are very quick to say, well, we'll just do our own thing.
Right. They're not about the mission and vision of the church. And if Jesus came to seek and save those who were lost, and our mission is to fulfill the Great Commission, we have to get our eyes off of just the ordinary, mundane, everyday situations and really look to focus on the mission and vision. So that is ultimately, when you start a church, you don't inherit anyone's problems. You don't inherit anybody's preconceived notions, the traditions of the church, the color of the carpet. You don't inherit any of those types of things. You're able to set your own boundaries and your own expectations. So it is much more rewarding in the long run, but it's the initial setup to that point that it is not only financially draining, it's emotionally draining, but it's spiritually draining at the same time. It's tough because it takes everything out of you. And we launched in September last year, portable. We had 202 at our launch. After about a month, we were averaging between 70 and 80, which is pretty consistent with the numbers. And then pre-COVID, we had finally hit over 100 3 out of the last 4 Sundays. So, but if somebody would have said, hey, you're going to plant a church and then 6 months later, you're going to have to leave your building and go online only as a new church, I probably would have said, I'm not going to start a church.
Sure. Yeah, that was a big momentum killer, or it felt like a momentum killer. If I'm going to be honest, I know that, we're, as pastors, we're supposed to have this super spiritual, everything's great, we're too blessed to be stressed, so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, I know for myself, it was the same way. Now, I wasn't planning a church, but we were at a place, a church that's actually been around for 100 years. But the former pastor had been here and done a great job. And when he moved on into the next place in his ministry, we came in, and the church was, as churches often do under new leadership, you'll have some growth, and you'll have some momentum that can get built. And man, we were hitting this momentum, and I was like, man, 2020 is going to be great. But I didn't know that 2020 was going to be the year of Corona and killer hornets and all the other stuff that 2020 is. But here we are. You talked about starting out in a pastor's home. When you go back and you think of some of the things that you learned as a kid, what was your view of church, and maybe church as a whole, Christianity, or maybe even the denomination, as a kid inside a pastor's home? How do you think that shaped your view? Do you think it jaded it somewhat? Do you think you have a certain amount of reality that other kids didn't have because you knew some of the inner workings? How do you think that changed your view as a kid?
I think, Patrick, it's anything we do, we can have a jaded view to it. We can look at it negatively, or we can look at it positively. I remember a few times, because my dad was also Assemblies of God for a little while. I remember a time at one of the churches he was at, I was just 8 or 9 years old, and there was a disagreement that broke out in the church, and I remember hearing part of it. I don't remember the exact details, but I remember it was a family that was upset about something in the church, and like you have with churches. But sure. I really look to the positives of it. It's like when people ask me, well, why did you stay Church of God? Why didn't you just go independent? That way you don't have to pay your part of your money in to tithe the tithe, or you don't have to do this, or why be associated with a denomination when the independent churches are growing? When it's in your DNA and it's your heritage, you want to be proud of it. And I'm proud of what we have. I'm proud of the Church of God. I'm proud of our campground. I'm proud of our youth camps. All of those things. I'm a product of all of those things. And just like any family, you're going to have disagreements, but you're still family.
Sure.
So at the Church of God family and the church family, even though I might not agree with everything, in fact, in our Redemption 101 class, our new members class, I briefly talk about the Church of God relationship. And, I highlight all of the things, nearly 8 million members worldwide. And, when we send in our 10%, it's going to help these 200 and something countries in the world to hear the gospel. And you talk about the highlights, and you don't talk about, the split of the Church of God and the Church of God of Prophecy. And you don't talk about, A.J. Tomlinson.
Sure.
You don't talk about all the bad things. So I guess I learned growing up to always focus on the positives, at least in public. Now, I'm going to be honest, in private, you have those reservations. You have those thoughts, because I think the enemy does that. He likes to bring up, hey, well, this happened, and don't you remember this, and this failure, and this situation? But I always do my best to overcome those thoughts with, thinking of all the great success stories, and thinking of all of the good times that I have had in my walk with the Lord when it relates to the Church of God and the local church. I understand when people say, hey, I don't have to go to church to go to heaven. I get that. But if anything, through COVID-19, it's taught us we're relational beings. We were created by a relational God to have relations with other people. And when we don't have relations with other people, we get isolated, socially insecure. And I have felt that way even myself. So I know as a pastor, if I feel that way, my church people are feeling that way.
Sure.
So it's a lot easier to live that Christian walk and that Christian life when I'm around a group of believers that are in agreement with me and are my family, extension of my family. So I look at Redemption Point Church as my family, and I like to keep them thinking of me as more as a they know I'm the pastor and they respect me, but as I'm a brother and I'm a friend more than anything to them.
So as a young man who grew up in the church setting, and you hear that conflict, one of the things that I don't want to say worry about, but one of the things that, well, I guess worry might be the right word. I have two girls, and I wonder what it will be like raising them in the church, because I have seen, and I guess we've all heard the story, the preacher's kid and so on and so forth, but it's not really so much that I'm thinking that my kid's just going to be worse behaved or something like that, as much as it is, I know the struggles that as a minister that my wife and I can have dealing with people and the hurts of people. And I don't want that to ever influence my daughters is as far as their relationship with God is concerned. And so I wonder, what was there ever a point where you're seeing these things, you're seeing your dad try to do these things, try to minister, meanwhile you've got the struggles that come just from the stuff of the organization of church and the idea of leading people and so on and so forth, where you just go, or I guess, how do you avoid or raise your kids in a way where you go, we're not going to internalize that, or we're going to avoid that. And I'm trying to even word it in the right way is difficult. But how did it affect you as a kid, hearing those things? What were you feeling in those moments? And how do you handle yourself in a way that where it doesn't affect your children, I guess would be the question.
When somebody comes against, a family member, you automatically, as a kid, you'd question it. I would think I'd hear something, and I'd ask my dad or ask my mom, hey, can you explain this to me? Because I didn't have any brothers or sisters. I was an only child, which is the reason I guess I have 6 kids now because I grew up as an only child. But I would ask and say, I don't understand this. And as I guess as a younger kid, I didn't really get into it as much. I was the one that brought my G.I. Joes to church, my Transformers to church. I slept on the pew probably till I was 8, because that's just the way it was. And as a teenager, I would hear things, but I guess I would do my best to just compartmentalize those things and move on to something else. That shaped me to how I am now, to where I focus on the big picture. The little things, though they can consume me because I am very detail oriented, I've learned to try to let go of things that are beyond my control and find somebody that can do those things and do them better than me or as good as me, and just let it ride. I think I learned that growing up. I mean, I'm just sitting here processing that question, because my dad would hear somebody say something, and the first thing he would say back to them, and we've heard it through church training and all, but hey, that's a good idea that you've got. Why don't you do that? Or hey, that'd be a great program for us to start. Why don't you do that? You want to build a building? Hey, you want to build a gymnasium? Why don't you start raising money for that? He would always throw it back on people. So that's, again, and I've heard that over the years, but
Sure.
I remember my dad, and he heard it, I'm sure, from somebody else. He probably heard it on a cassette tape or maybe even an 8-track tape. It wasn't on a podcast. But that would help me, and that's helped shape me how I am today. Now, when it comes to our kids now, because those 8 to 10 years that we were out of church, in ministry, we really were never plugged into a church. We went to a few. We weren't consistent. It wasn't, but because, I mean, I'm gonna be honest, I would find fault everywhere I went. I would look, I'd say, okay, the preaching's too long, the preaching's too short, the music's too loud, the music's too soft. I was the worst church member possible. I would not want to pastor me, but I was looking at things through the lens of a staff pastor, a pastor that had been in ministry. And so I would automatically do that. So, our kids never were plugged in anywhere. So being plugged in now consistently and having a program, they've not really had to face anything from the negative side from a person yet. Pray, knock on wood. Praise the Lord for that. It will come. I know it will. And we'll just have to do the best we can when it happens. But I don't want to isolate them too much, because they're homeschooled, and I want them to be able to survive when they see conflict and when they see issues. And I want them to learn from how we resolve that conflict, whether it's in church or it's in business, whatever it might be, so that when they grow up, they can be even better than I am from what I learned from my dad.
Yeah, you talk about being a bad member. Do you ever think that maybe you were a bad member because you weren't supposed to be being a member?
That could be it, to be honest. Maybe that's it, because, I was the worst. I was the worst, man. I would not want to pastor me at all. So my wife would always joke with me about that. She'd say, hey, I want to just be a church member, but you're the one that doesn't want to be one. I'm like, no, I just, I don't like this. I don't like that. It was always something.
Well, it's hard to be satisfied when you're doing something other than, even when you're burnt out, when you know that you're not being fulfilled in what it is that you're supposed to be doing, for sure. Now, you mentioned that word burnout, and you talked about how, actually you talked about how twice you kind of experienced that point of burnout. What do you think led to you being burned out in those times?
The first time was I was just a word we can't use on this podcast. I was a young know-it-all that thought, hey, I deserve everything. And I learned very quickly I didn't deserve anything at all. I don't even deserve salvation. It's just by grace that we're saved. So everything that was uh, biblical and everything that you should go off of, I was looking at it through a business sense. I wasn't looking at it through a spiritual lens. I was looking at the church as a business, looking at it more of as an income. And I know, hey, I know we all do that because I mean it's just, again, it's in our nature. I mean we're if you say, hey, I'm not competitive, then you're lying to yourself. We're all competitive. We're like Ricky Bobby. If you're not first, you last. I mean, we want that. I mean, we want to have the success. We want to, but I at 22, 23, you don't have any success. You can barely even rent a U-Haul. So it's just that way. And I think that's what got me to the point of, I mean, going through three churches, three short pastorates, to where I realized I was more of the problem. It wasn't the church, it was me. And stepping out of that, and I learned a lot from that, and I learned a lot going back on staff. And I still ran my business. I had it on the side, but still working on staff at a church and administrating, doing more of the things that I was better at when it comes to business and organization, and growing as a leader. And then by the time I was, pushing 30, when we went to Inman, I used some of those things, and we could have probably still made Inman work. I think the problem, and I've said this to some of the good people that were over there at that time, I didn't have a heart for Inman, Spartanburg. I've never liked Spartanburg. It's a personal opinion. I'm more of a Greenville person. It's that way. I mean, you deal with it up there. I mean, you got people where you're at, Rock Hill or Charlotte, York. I mean, you got people that are, I mean, with the Panthers, moving their headquarters to York County. I mean, you've got everybody on one side of the fence or the other, that people are, upset because they're like, well, this will become the Rock Hill Panthers. That's never going to happen. But people jump to conclusions. So I
Yeah.
never was a Spartanburg guy. I just didn't like Spartanburg. We shopped in Greenville. We ate in Greenville. So long term, that was never going to probably be viable for us in Inman. So
Did
when
you
we
ever
decided
live
to,
in Inman when you
yes, I lived
pastored
in
there?
Inman. I did.
Did you?
Because the property had a nice building. It was on 6 acres. It was built when they did the Inman Church. The guy that was there had a big Christian school and a daycare. But when I went there, all that had went. I mean, it had just went away. I mean, they were renting out the building to 3 different churches for 3 different events a week. Plus, there was a Russian school that was meeting there, teaching English as a second language. So you had so many things going on in the building. And then the quote unquote parsonage was a unwed mother's home that was built but never finished. It was a 7-bedroom, 3.5 bath, almost dormitory style house that had been converted to a parsonage. So when we sold our place on the campground, which was, a 1,500 square foot house, we moved into this 3,200 square foot dormitory style house that, it was just not the best living environment either. And I've got a part of my team, some of my leaders actually live in Inman that drive here to Simpsonville. They felt called to come and be part of our launch team and still with me. And they know all about Inman. There's just a couple of restaurants that are good, just a few, and anything else you got to go to Greenville or Spartanburg for. But when you don't have a burden for an area, and I think that's the reason why I don't mean to get off on this, but we have guys that, and it's not as bad now, but it's been bad, and it may come back. But guys, whenever there's a problem, they're the first to leave the area. They're the first to try to move to go to another church because they're not really called to that area. I'm not saying they're not called to pastor, because I think they're called to pastor, but it's actually finding that city, that town, that community that they're called to pastor, that they're called to reach. I think when you do that and you stop pastoring just your church, but you try to pastor your community, I really believe that's when true ministry starts to happen. And
Sure.
and you get your mind off of the numbers and where I rank and all of that. I'm not saying you get them off completely, because I think it's good to have others that you look to. I think competition is healthy. I do. I know that sounds crazy, but we're in a competitive society. But when we're all competing to see the lost saved, I think that's when it's fun. Is knowing, hey, this church does it this way, and I can take a little bit from how they do it. I can take a little bit of their style. Hey, this one does a little Southern gospel. I can take that. I can tweak it a little bit, and I can use it too. When you're taking everybody's positives, and again, not worrying about their negatives, but you take their positives and you pull it together. It really is something else. That's what I think the body of Christ is at our best. I think through all that we've been going through, when we have these Zoom calls and that I have with you guys, and I have some with some art guys. I mean, you hear all these great ideas, and you can celebrate with what people are doing. And man, that gives me joy now. I mean,
Sure.
Used to, I mean, and again, that's the difference in me now than I was 10 years ago or 15 years ago. Because I wouldn't have joy then. I'd be saying, well, why are they doing it? I wish that was me. But it's not now. I'm just like, man, I'm so happy for them. I can't wait till I can do this. I can't wait till I can do that. And that's just a product of growth as a person.
Yeah. Well, they say that a man in his 20s and 30s, he'll spend one of those decades trying to prove something to himself. He'll spend the other decade trying to prove something to everyone else. And it's not till he gets into his 40s and maybe 50s that he can get any real accomplishments done, because now he's done proving something to everyone else, and he can just do the work.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so there's something to that. It's interesting too. You talk about the idea of comparison and competition and that sort of thing. I just had Brandon Key on. We just recorded. In fact, that podcast hasn't released yet. It will be out before this one is. But I just recorded with him yesterday, and we were talking about, and in the podcast, he talks openly about how he went through a very dark time in his life, in his ministry. And that time was right after he had built a new church. His numbers were going well, church was growing, so on and so forth. But he just hit this spot of darkness. And he talks about how during that time, he was comparing himself to someone who was more successful. And so we were realizing during the podcast that at the same time that was happening with him, I was at a church that I was in the middle of difficulty with. Our church had been growing, but we had this thing where I had to deal with trouble. I had to take care of an issue. I had kind of some ringleaders of some issues, had to confront it, ended up losing some people. And in the middle of all that, he's literally in a room in his house doing nothing, feels like a shell of a person, just in depression, for lack of a better word. And while he's in the middle of that, I'm, a couple hours up the interstate saying, man, if I just had it like he had it, he's got it so easy. Everything's going good. And we're so tempted to do that. And I think that's not just a pastoring thing though. That's a life thing where we compare ourselves to each other. And that's actually kind of been a thing that's come up a lot. It's one thing to look and go, hey man, I like the way they're doing it and I'm going to challenge that. But at the end of the day, the only person, we're all in competition, if you will, against the enemy, against Satan, but we're also, I'm in competition with the pastor, with the father, with the teacher that I was yesterday.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's who I'm in competition with.
That's a great way to put it. I mean, it really is, because I mean, you're always wanting to build off of your previous failure, previous achievement, whatever it is. Hey, I can be better tomorrow. I can wake up tomorrow and this can be different. I can, next year I want to be at this place. In business, I mean, I know the sincerest, this imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. I've got a guy that he wouldn't listen to this podcast, so it's fine. I can talk about it. But I mean, he's a friend, but he asked me, 6-7 years ago. I mean, we the business was doing really well. We put in a nice pool. I had a Mercedes. Candy had an Escalade. I had a big Sprinter van that we took to Disney when we would travel. I mean, just crazy stuff that I was always trying to fill the void of ministry. I really was. I was trying to stick it with possessions, with things that money could buy or debt could buy. I'm not going to say money, this debt, because I mean, I was making money, so I had plenty of credit lines that I could borrow from. to do things that I wanted to do. And he would always be like, man, how'd you get this? And how did you get that? And the one thing I never did ever, and I'm very proud of this. A lot of people didn't know all that we had because we didn't push it out there on social media. We didn't. I didn't. There was only one time, the Mercedes that I drove, the only time we posted a picture of it was when my daughter took it to prom. That was the only time we did. Now I drive an F-150 now. I'm not a pastor that's driving a Mercedes. I've actually looked at one, but it's like a 2004. It's like 16 years old, and it's like $4,900, and it's a really good deal.
Doesn't matter. It's a Mercedes. We ain't going to church there.
So, I mean, that's it. So, I mean, I've got an F-150, and Candy's got an Expedition now. But, that was the only time we did it, and it was more or less because she was going to prom. But this gentleman has hit some success in business and in life, but I've noticed they like to share it with everybody else. And hey, that's fine. But when you flaunt what you have, when you're boastful, when you're proud, I mean, pride does come before the fall. And
yes,
I mean, again, COVID has affected my business to an extent, and where I would never have an issue with ever worrying about a purchase of a certain amount. That's had to be reduced a couple of zeros off of it. It just has had to be because of things. I had to change my health insurance plan. I've had to look at changing, some of the benefits for my team. I've had to lay a couple of people off. I've had to do different things because you adapt. And I look back now, and please, if anybody's listening, thinking, he's just that's not it. I'm just saying, I'm glad that I never tried to push out this image of somebody that really wasn't me. It wasn't. I was just trying to fill a void. And I think, again, when we find a community where we can pastor, when we find a place, and we're always trying to better ourselves, like you said, Patrick, when you're competing with yourself, when you're trying to become a better person, a better steward of your abilities, a better steward of your time and your talent, your treasures, I really think that's when we start hitting on all cylinders, and you kind of get the wind to your sail. And like the Imperials used to sing, "Sail on." I'm dating myself, man, but that was some good tunes, man, back in the day. Imperials, Paul Smith, Armand, those guys.
I'm going to guess that's not going to be on your playlist for your first Sunday back in the sanctuary.
Dude, it's on my playlist all the time. But I mean, I don't think my guys want to play it. But I mean, I play it all the
time. So when you're dealing with this idea of wrestling with going back into the ministry, going back into pastoring, and you're thinking about planning and so on and so forth. You were at that point when it came time, hey, I'm going to plant. There's just no other place besides the Greenville area for you, it sounds like.
Well, we had a couple of options. I had thought about, and really most of them were around Greenville. We were talking about Simpsonville, of course, but my uncle pastors in Simpsonville also, so that was a little bit of a challenge. So we looked as far as we could going towards the Five Forks area of Simpsonville. We had looked over at kind of the Piedmont area, Powdersville, which my dad had planted a church in 91 in Powdersville. And we kind of just looked around to find what it would be. And we prayed, and every time we prayed, we came back to just being in Simpsonville, the Greenville area. Because this had been home for years, and the style of church we would do would be different than any of the other Church of Gods in the area. There would not be, I wouldn't pick up anybody from any other Church of God, and none of my people would go to another Church of God. So you wouldn't have to worry about that, even if we were within 3, 4, 5 miles, because I know there's a lot of Church of Gods in this area. It's kind of like the metropolis of Church of Gods in the state is in Greenville County. But even if you when I first met with Brother Gillum about this, when you put all the Church of Gods on a map in Greenville County, there were 3 specific holes where population trends were going, and I put them all up on a presentation for him and showed him. And again, it was the Five Forks area was one, and Southern Greenville County which was the second one. He said, well, we have a guy that's looking to plant a church up in the Five Forks area. So he said, I really think that southern Greenville County area would be the place for you to go to. So that's kind of how that developed. I believe the guy that was going to go to the Five Forks area has now moved more into Greenville, so that area is back open. I won't say that I don't ever look for buildings over there, because it's still on my heart. But because there have not been new churches planted in a long time in this area, population trends have moved. So housing develops, subdivisions. You try to go to where the people are at. And if you're there, it makes it easier for them to come. It makes them easier to find out that you're there. My son-in-law and daughter are youth pastors out in the Weatherford, Texas area. And I had to go out there for an art training conference too in March last year. And I was blown away. Greenville reminds me, not population-wise, but in some of the trends, you have different styles in Greenville. TR, Travelers Rest, is very artsy, very of that urban. I think like in Charlotte, like the NODA area, it's that kind of eclectic feel. You've got Powdersville, that's kind of a hodgepodge. That's the west side. The east side, Taylors and Greer, is a lot of the more corporate mindset. And then southern Greenville County is more of the laid back, not farmers, but blue collar, work with their hands type environment. So you have all of that. Just like Texas, they have multiple areas in Dallas and Fort Worth where there's just populations. And when you look at that from a church standpoint, you're gonna reach who you are. And even though I can't work well with my hands, I'm not necessarily blue collar, I tend to lean more towards those types of people. I guess it's how I was raised, my heart, the compassion we have, with the care that we try to show to people. And that's where southern Greenville County really started popping up, as this would be the place for us to be. I do know the scripture. Jesus was despised and not respected in his home, and I have to fight that every once in a while, because this has been home for a while. But God has still blessed us, and God has still been good to us, even throughout those challenges.
Hey, More Than a Conversation listeners, I hope that you are enjoying this conversation as much as I am, and I hope that you're getting something great out of it today. I'm just wanting to jump in here in the middle to take a moment and let you know a few ways that you can help out More Than a Conversation. First, wherever you're listening, please go ahead and click that subscribe button. That will definitely help, and that'll make sure that you get all the content. Also, if you have a way to rate, if your app allows you to give a 4-star, 5-star, whatever the rating is that's the top rating, I would so appreciate if you would go ahead and drop a rating there. That's how the aggregators and the distributors rank podcasts, and the higher the ranking you give, the more ears will be able to hear these great conversations. Thanks again, and I'm hoping that today has been more than a conversation for you. Now, let's get back to it. Now, this is a question that is maybe a difficult one to answer, but in church planning, particularly in a region that is church saturated, and in a city that can have the appearance, if you look at population, it's not saturated, but could have the appearance of being church saturated. How do you find yourself as far as, or how is the church planner received? And we can edit it out later if we have to. But how is the church planner received by the established church?
I think it's harder. Greenville County per capita has more churches than any other county in South Carolina. That's a fact. There's not an area that that has fewer churches than Greenville County in South Carolina. So when looking at the metrics like ARC does, ARC will pastor a church, or I feel called to church planning. They'll put you through the program. If you don't have an area that you're feeling something towards, they'll kind of show you on a map, hey, Wichita, Kansas, there's not hardly any churches here. In South Carolina, they would probably look more towards Myrtle Beach, Charleston, Lexington, areas like that, they probably wouldn't look at Greenville. I'm just being honest. They just wouldn't. So that was a challenge. Even in our own denomination, we had a few that were of some concern because, hey, why are we going to have another church? I mean, I've already got 6 within 3 miles of me. We're going to stick another one right here that are all the same denomination, the same affiliation. So, yeah, it was challenging, and it's really not been until we got established and several months in for any of those cares or those concerns to kind of dissipate, because those pastors saw I'm not a threat. And I hate to, I'm not saying it like threat is destroying, but their people are not going to come to my church. Our styles are 2 totally different styles. And I think that's worked in our favor. And I think when you approach church planting, even if it's in an area that's populated and saturated with churches, there are different types of churches for different types of people.
Absolutely.
You've got the uber charismatic, that's got banners and flag waving and dance teams doing during the choir. You've got the traditional Pentecostals that are it's a message in tongues every service, and they're the ones that, hey, if the Holy Spirit moved today and the preacher didn't preach, so we had a good service. You got those. You've got the ones that are very laid back, that are still Pentecostal, but are just, hey, it's really planned and orchestrated, so the Holy Spirit has a hard time to move. So you have all of these styles, and again, there's not anything wrong with any of the styles. Just like with music, I can be singing the Imperials, I can be singing the Gaithers, or I can go to vertical worship or elevation worship. Hey, it's all good to me. I like it all.
Hey, have you seen the Worship Chicken, by the way? Have you seen the Worship Chicken?
I saw the Worship Chicken. Yes, I saw it last night, and I
like
him
too. That's the best thing
ever. I felt the Holy Spirit when he was singing, so I was like, man, the blessing is fantastic.
I did feel like it was I was very blessed. The only problem is bitter and sweet water can't flow from the same place. And I hear that, outside of off the pulpit, I hear he's foul mouthed. That was a dad joke. There we go.
He's foul mouthed. He's foul mouthed. I did like it how he was very humble at the end, because he actually looked at the camera and he bowed. So he was, he was thanking everybody for their applause. So that was very
yes.
Very good. Very good.
The Worship Chicken. Anyway, so all the different styles, you got the different styles. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I was throwing Worship Chicken in there.
You got those. You got the Worship Chicken. Hey, you've got everything. And I mean, we're right here in the backyard of New Spring. Elevation just started a campus in the fall when we launched at Furman up near TR. So I mean, but again, that's satellite churches. That's the campuses. That's not live preaching. So, you've got people that are going to be drawn to that, but you've got some that's going to want to go to hear a live person. They're going to want to hear a live communicator. So again, once people saw that, hey, we're not pulling anybody from anybody's church, nobody's being affected. I mean, that really went into our favor. The majority of our people are people we have won that did not go to another. They were not a member of a Church of God. They thought the Church of God handled snakes. They just, I'm just being honest. They
you
had
guys
no
don't
idea.
Have snakes?
No, the end of a shovel is the only time, and they're usually really, really teeny then, because they still scare me half to death. So, but I mean, when we get our eyes off of, again, being intimidated, but we can look at it and say, hey, this is kingdom mindset. This is kingdom mentality. I'm excited that there's somebody else coming in, because he's going to reach a whole different group of people than me. And even in our same area, I mean, Josh Trammell planted a church a couple of years ago. And me and Josh, though, are going to reach 2 totally different types of people, because we're 2 totally different people. And that's the thing. Somebody else could come into Simpsonville and we meet at the theater. Somebody could come in, do a slightly different style music, but probably in the same vein, and a different communicator, and they're going to reach a totally different group of people, because their style is not my style. And yes. I guess, again, over the last 20 years, I've gotten comfortable with my style. And when we get comfortable with who we are, again, we can excel, and God can begin to use us. 20 years ago, I was trying to be what everybody else was. I mean, that's Rod Parsley was big then. So bless God, you got to, there's Jubilee in 2003. You got to have all of those types of things. And I love Pastor Rod, but that's not me. That's not me. And then in 2007, 2008, that's when New Spring got really big, and Perry was real big then. And so, hey, I tried to emulate Perry a little bit. Finally, 2019, 2020, I'm just being Shane Stone. I'm not emulating anybody else. I'm not trying to be anybody else. I'm just trying to be the best Shane I can be. And most days, it's just okay. Some days, it's below average. But I try to do the very best I can do and do what Paul said. I try to become all things to all people that I might reach some. So if I've got to get out there with them and ride the horses, if I got to hop on a motorcycle, I got to be on a trike because I cannot ride a two-wheeled one. I got to have a three-wheeled one. I'll do that with them. I'm not the most athletic, but if I can play a little ball with them, I'll do whatever I can to try to reach some and build that relationship, with them.
Now, you say that, and it's interesting because if we're not careful, we can quickly get caught up in the idea of people are going to pull people from here or whatever. But at the end of the day, there's a few things. Number one, you can have 3 chicken restaurants side by side, and in Rock Hill, there's a Chick-fil-A next to a Wendy's. Well, most places are like that. Next to the what is it, Popeyes, and then right down the street's the KFC, and everybody's going to go to a different spot. If you're in Rock Hill, if I want fried chicken, I'm not going to any of them. I'm going to a place we got up here called the Chicken King. But there's different people are going to have a different taste, a different desire. The other thing I think that we miss sometimes is we claim to be so spiritually minded in so many things, but if we believe in spiritual apostolic anointing, if we believe in pastors being called by God, if we believe in fathers and sons and daughters, well, if that's the case, I'm not worried. I've never been upset because there's a house beside me or there's a house down the street, because I'm assuming, and if they have kids, that doesn't upset me because I'm fathering my daughters. And I think sometimes, we miss out on that, but honestly, it's a lot like business. It's a lot like a lot of other things, podcasting, whatever it is, writing. We have this idea of scarcity, but at the end of the day, we're not running out of people.
No.
Greenville there's not 27 people left in Greenville that haven't chosen a church yet. Right. and everybody's competing for them. In fact, it's quite the opposite. So I think that's important to remember.
Yeah, and if you look at all of our churches, like in Simpsonville, you've got, long-term pastors. John Smith's been at Word of Life since the late 80s, I think. And my uncle's started Abundant Life in 92. Delton Hand's been at Simpsonville maybe 10 years. And before that, he was the youth pastor there years ago. All 3 of those guys are friends of mine, mentors. Delton's been on the youth board with my dad on at different times. All 3 of them are different styles, even though they're all Church of God. And I would, have it on their sign or whatever. They're all 3 different styles. And my style is completely different than their style. And I think that's the beauty of the Church of God now versus how it was 30 plus years ago when my grandfather was pastoring and they'd move every 2 or 4 years, because you would almost go to every Church of God and every style was the same. We all sang out of the convention book songs. We all sang out of the hymnal. You were up north, right? So you weren't around here. So you guys did you guys have convention books? Did you have any of that?
Well, I grew up in a church that was not a Church of God. We had a lot of Church of God and Assembly of God roots. For us, it was the Redback was what we grew up on. Yeah.
Yep. So you go back and you see all the churches were close to the same, and some people like that, I guess, because you could move from one meal to another meal, and you could doing the same job, but you could go to church and it was the same, but as this melting pot of society has adapted and changed, and you go to Atlanta and there are certain parts of Atlanta where they don't even speak English. It's just because there's so many Asians or Hispanics, and hey, that's America. That's what makes it so great to be here, land of the free, home of the brave. And I mean, you can do the same thing when it comes to church, because again, all of our styles are different, but Delton exceeds excellence with what he does. And if you're looking for a uber Pentecostal church, I tell people you go to my uncle's church. I mean, he's the walking, he's like the fire, on top of everybody's head. That's him. I mean, he's just that way. And then if you want something very creative, you go to John Smith's church. I mean, it's out of the box thinking. John has evolved Word of Life decade after decade, and man, they just keep on going. So, I mean, it's all great. And I think if you take that attitude and you're looking at all the positive things, it's hard to find anything negative. And I've had to do that. I mean, you've had a couple of conversations. I could be negative, but
sure,
if I look at it positively, because me being negative is not going to affect any of those guys. It's not going to change anything. It's not going to change the way anybody else thinks. It just affects me. So when I'm positive about it, I feel better about it, and I really think we can do more for the kingdom.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let me ask you this. Obviously, you are approaching this pastorate with a different mindset that you've ever had. You're probably more poised for success than you've ever been, because you're healthier as a human than you've been. You're more mature. You've grown. In fact, in many ways, your story could be the personification of the idea that a leader ought not be a novice, because your experiences have taught you much. Your life has brought you to a different place. And now you're stepping into this role as a whole, just in a different place. And yeah, I mean, no doubt, even, and again, we're not going to do a Corona podcast. I've heard enough of how to pastor in Corona. But even this was something you would have dealt with entirely differently while you were a younger man or a guy that was at a different place in life. But what are you doing now? One thing I like to get from my guests, obviously you being a pastor, there's going to be pastors that are going to want to listen, church people that are going to listen to this. What's your daily life or weekly life, or what kind of routines, practices, disciplines are you including in your life to keep you at a better mental space, to have you prepared? What have you added to your routine that's what Shane Stone does to keep him on track?
I think, and this is a simple one, it's just communicating more with peers. I'm going to be honest. I think through all that we've gone through, if I didn't have, Facebook groups that I joined, and I joined a whole bunch of them, Church Creative, CMG, Visual Media, all that kind of stuff. Right before all of this began, that's kind of been an outlet to stay in communication, to see what other people are doing, being on, sometimes I think I'm on a Zoom call every hour, but I mean, being on Zoom calls with guys that are peers, that are friends, texting guys, just trying to stay again positive with that, because everything else has really changed. I mean, it just has. I mean, I did try to keep the one routine is I eat Mexican every Sunday after church. I've done that for a decade. And I eat it here at my restaurant in Fountain Inn. So even when everything closed down, I still would go and pick up the food and take it home. I mean, that's what I do. And I know it sounds crazy, but that's my thing. And I tried to keep some sense of normalcy with our kids through all of that, because everything else changed. I mean, my office, we closed down the office for our normal office hours. Our work is down, being over 75%. So of course I don't have to have as much staff, all of those things change. So, I mean, between me, binge watching stuff on Netflix or Hulu, I've tried to keep myself busy. I guess that's the biggest thing. I'm the type of person that if I sit around and I don't have anything to do, I'm going to go insane. I just am. I'm going to lose my mind.
Yeah,
And
I honestly feel like I almost get like where I need a day. I'm like, all right, I need a day to do whatever. And I even tell my wife, hey, whatever it is, it could be a thing. It could be like, hey, there's a new version of Madden came out. So like, I'm going to do that for a few hours.
yeah,
And that's going to be my day, or this, this next day and a half, I want to really be involved in this activity or whatever. But beyond that, like I get to this place, well, for me, it's like a melancholy, or I mean, I don't want to say it's a depression that happens in 2 days, but it has to, like that. I got to break out of that because I start
right.
feeling this funk if I don't do that.
No, you're right. I mean, for me, I like playing with Legos. I know it sounds crazy, but I'm one of the AFOLs, adult fans of Legos. I mean,
Gotcha.
I'm all about. I have a Lego room at my house, but it's a disaster right now. Over the last 3 weeks, we've went through our attic, we've cleaned it out, we've got rid of toys. I've took stuff to Goodwill. A garage, we have a 3-car garage. It was completely full. Now I've got 2 cars parked in it. I have the exercise equipment that I've yet to get on through this pandemic, is sitting over there, and it's ready to get on. And I keep saying, tomorrow's the day, tomorrow's the day, tomorrow's the day. Um, but I'm trying to take the time to stay busy with that. But again, the constant has been, it's a Zoom call, it's a communication with somebody, it's having a pastor friend in the area or a preacher friend come over to the house to have dinner, because we couldn't meet at restaurants. It's
Sure.
been doing that has really helped to keep me encouraged through all of this. And the one thing that has changed, that I'm working on changing more, is through when we're all done with this, no matter where we're at, um, is I'm going to do some more of my preparation, some more of my work and stuff at home than I have before. I can tell now that through this virtual environment we've been in, I can do stuff at home. I don't have to come to the office. I can be there with my kids there. People's not going to be upset if they hear my kids screaming in the background,
Right.
because they've been hearing that. So it doesn't really matter. I don't have to, look my best. Hey, I get on those Zoom calls with you guys, and I'm usually in a tank top. So I mean, I don't have to look the best. And again, that's just something that I've kind of adapted to, because I have little ones, and I've got a new baby too that was born in February. So uh, that's something that is changing, to where I'm gonna try to get into my Lego room. That's a disaster. That's the last room to be fixed in the house, and straighten it up some and make that in kind of a where I can have a computer and office a little bit there. But we don't have to have. I mean, I remember, again, this was just comes with age, but man, I had some nice offices back when I was 21, 22 years old. Everything was straight on my desk. Nobody ever come to see me because I didn't have anybody to talk to. But I
Yeah.
mean, it was nice. And even in Inman, when I was there, I mean, it was nice. And I've got a nice office here, but I've got such a mess. If you could see it, it's embarrassing. I got stuff. I got toys everywhere in here. And this is at my office, not my home
Yeah.
office. I got a stack of bills over here. I don't know which one's what. I mean, I got stuff mixed up all over the place. And it's just, as time has changed, things have just, this isn't as much of it's not that it's not a priority, but I would rather spend the time enjoying it with my kids, and watching something stupid on TV, or watching not stupid, The Last Dance. Hey, that's fantastic. So, doing those types of things. But I think, again, staying in communication with guys, and then just I don't mean this sexually, but just loving on my wife, not
Yeah.
not because uh, I'm wanting something, just because I love her.
Yeah.
Reminding her that, hey, everything's going to be okay. We're all in this thing together. Everybody's dealing with this thing together. Because I mean, as pastors, a lot of times we become supermen, but our wives are not. They're they're
Yeah.
they're not thinking on that same wavelength. And Candy's not been on that same wavelength. I mean, she's been worried, she's been concerned, she's been scared. And the times that we've spent, I've slept in later because, hey, not really a schedule to follow. So I mean, that's me keeping my arm around her. That's comforting. that's helped her to kind of get through this. And I think that's the thing we overlook sometimes is, we need each other. We need
Yeah,
our
absolutely.
wives. We need our brothers. We do more than ever before. And if one thing we take from this, the after effects of the pandemic, is keeping the attitude of this relational attitude that we're with everybody. Hey, we want to better each other. We want to be there for each other in the good times and the bad, because we're all in this together. Not just COVID-19, but in winning the harvest, we're all in it
Absolutely.
together.
Absolutely. Shane, thank you so much for coming on today. I'm excited about the future for you guys. I know right now you are going to be mobile, but folks can follow you online. They can find out where you're going to be meeting. They can find out when you'll be back in the theater setting that you were in, so on and so forth, if they want to be at your church. But also they can follow you on social media, I'm sure. Can you tell us, before we sign off today, can you tell us how can people follow you, and how can they follow the church, and possibly even sow into the ministry you've got going there?
Yeah, the website's redemptionpoint.church. You could follow the church on Facebook, Instagram at My Redemption Point. We try to keep all that stuff fairly updated. The website's designed for this virtual experience right now that we're in until the summer. I'm on Facebook at Shane B. Stone, on Twitter at Shane B. Stone, and on Instagram at Shane B. Stone. And then my wife's a little more active on Instagram. I think hers is Candy B. Stone. I'm more of the Facebooker. She's more of the Instagrammer. I'm more of the lurker on Facebook because I like to read everybody else's stuff. I probably comment on 100 things a day, but I only type one of them. So that's the way I do.
Well, thank you, Pastor Stone, for joining us today. It was an honor to have you on.
Thank you, Patrick. Appreciate you very much.
And for everybody listening, we hope that today has been more than a conversation for you. Thanks again for being part of More Than a Conversation today. If you'd like more content like this, check out my blog at www.pastorconley.com. That's PastorConley.com. Again, that's PastorConley.com. I'd also love to see you join us in worship at Garden Sanctuary. If you're ever in Rock Hill, South Carolina, or the greater Charlotte area, we'd love to have you stop by and worship with us. Check us out at www.gardensanctuary.org. That's gardensanctuary.org. Until next time, I hope this has been more than a conversation.